Okay, good morning, students. So, do you love reading poems and short stories? So, some people love reading, but they cannot because some people love reading because they can connect to the stories, values, or message of their materials. So, in this lesson, we will talk about on how to connect ourselves to the message of our reading material. So, let's start. So, there are two ways to read poems or stories. The first is within the context, the other one or the second is out of the context. So what do we mean when we said within the context? When we said within the context, we only talk about the text or the story itself. Kung ano yung nakasulat dun sa story, yun lang yung pag-usapan natin. What happened in the story. So when we said within the context, we talk about the characters, ano yung setting, then the sequence of events of the story. What happened in the story or what is the poem all about. That is what we mean by within the context. Then out of the context, when we said out of the context, we talk about a particular issue, concern, and dispositions in our life. So yun yung out of the context. Out of the context is the application of the message of the story to our life. So kung poem yan, kung story yan, meron yung message, it has a message. And how do we apply it to ourselves? So ito yung sinasabi nating out of the context. So to make it short, so within the context talks about the story itself, the whole story or the whole story of the passage or the what we call this, the context, yung story natin. Then, the out of the context talks about the reality of life. Yung buhay na natin. How does it affect us? Yun yung out of the context. So, let us connect the story to our real life. So, how do we connect yung mga story to real life situations? So, there are different types of connection. Three types of connection that we are going to discuss. Una, yung text to self connection, text to text connection, and text to world connection. So start tayo dun sa what is text to self connection. Ano ibig sabihin nito? So text to self connections are actually personal connections that you make between yourself and the selection you are dealing with. Yung binabasa natin. Kino-connect natin yung sarili natin dun sa text na yon. Then, how do we connect it? We use previous experiences, emotions, opinions, maybe similar to one that is present in the materials. Kung ano yung nakaka-relate tayo dun sa kwento na yon, dun sa story na yon, or sa message nung poem na yon. Yun yung text to self. Are self connected to the text. When we said text, yung hindi yung yung written text, it's the story itself. That's what we mean by text. Questions we ask using text to self connections. May mga ito yung guidelines. If you want to use this one, you can use this guidelines. So, answer the following question. What does this remind me in my life? Kung meron kang binasa, anong pinapaalala nito sa buhay natin? Number 2 is, how is it similar to my life? May similarity ba yung binabasa mo dun sa buhay mo? That's how we connect. 3, how is it different from my life? Anong pinagkaiba nila? Kasi yun yung kwento niya. Ano naman yung kwento mo? 4, how has something like this ever happened to me? Yung text ba is nangyari na sa'yo? 5, how does this relate to my life? And number 6, what were my feelings when I read this? So these are the guidelines on how we use text to self connection. So let's have an example of text to self connection. From the movie X-Men, kwento ko na lang sa inyo yung movie. Short clip lang, wala akong clip ng movie. Kwento ko sa inyo yung nangyari from the movie X-Men. If you are familiar with Wolverine or what we call, whose name is Logan. So Logan, sino ba si Logan? He was looking for his self-identity. Kumbaga hindi niya alam yung past niya. He doesn't know anything about his past. It's blank. Then he came to Professor X. We know that Professor X has a special ability of reading minds. So kaya niyang alamin kung ano yung iniisip mo, kaya niyang alamin kung ano yung ginawa mo. That's Professor X. Then Wolverine asked Professor X to read his mind. Sabi ni Wolverine, why don't you try to read my mind para malaman ko yung past ko? Kasi gusto niyang malaman ano ba yung nangyari sa kanya. So he wants to discover his past. But Professor X failed to know what is in the past life of Wolverine. So hindi niya nakita, kumbaga it's blank. Since Professor X wasn't able to give what Logan is looking for, he wasn't able to give that, he simply said, ito lang yung lines na sinabi ni Professor X, there are things that mind needs to find answers by itself. So what do we mean by those lines? There are things that mind needs to find answers by itself. So when we said there are things that mind, accept, wait lang. So yan. Kala ko may nagpa-accept. Nag-chat ba? Wala naman. Okay. So what do we mean by ito? So what do we mean by the lines, there are things that minds don't find answers by itself? So sinasabi ni Professor X na yung mind natin, siya dapat yung maghanap kung ano yung mga tanong dun sa kasagutan. Kung ano yung mga tanong dun sa mga ano yung mga sagot sa mga tanungan sa buhay niya, baliktad. Yon. That's what Professor X is trying to tell to Logan. There are things that yung mind niya needs to find answer by itself. Yung utak mo mismo, yung maghahanap ng mga sagot. So, when I tell you the story about Professor X and Logan, that is within the context. Wala tayong pinag-uusapan, kundi yung kwento lang nila. But let's go out of the context. When we said out of the context, connect natin yung sarili natin kay Logan. Sometimes, Logan is the one who is looking for his self-identity. Hindi niya alam kung sino siya. And there are some people who grew up who didn't know who they are. Kumbaga, sino nga ba sila? Ano nga ba yung role nila sa buhay? Ano nga ba yung ano? They are the one who doesn't know kung sino sila. And that represents Logan in the story. Then Logan was looking for the answer. Pero ang sagot ni Professor X, it's remarkable kasi there are things that mind define answers by itself. Kung meron kang gustong malaman tungkol sa sarili mo, yung utak mo yung maghahanap ng mga kasagutan. For example, meron kang gustong malaman, meron kang gustong maunawaan. Kahit anong turo sa iyo ng ibang tao, kahit anong sabi nila, ito yung tama, hanggat hindi mo iniintindi, hindi mo siya maunawaan. That's what Professor said. That is what Professor X said in the story. Kailangan unawain mo yung mga bagay-bagay. This is out of the context, applying to yourself. For example, meron kang gustong malaman, meron kang gustong maintindihan. You want to learn something. Alam mo, kahit anong turo nila, kung hindi mo sila papansinin, hindi mo bibigyan ng attention, pay attention to what they are saying, you will never learn. You need to pay attention, you need to look for your answer. Sino naghahanap? Yung utak mo. Yung utak mo yung nag-iisip. Yung utak mo nag-a-adapt dun sa mga bagay-bagay na yon. For you to understand certain things. Yun yung sinasabi ni Professor X. And that's how you apply out of the context. Sometimes hindi ka nakikinig sa isang tao kasi boring. Kumbaga pagka nagsalita sila, walang connection kasi dun sa tao. Walang connection dun sa... But listen to this. Listen to the most boring person. Pay attention to what he is saying. If you pay attention, then you will learn something from that person. Kahit gaano pa ka-boring yung topic, makinig ka lang. Pay attention. Pay attention ka lang dun sa sinasabi niya, then you will be interested dun sa mga sinasabi niya, kahit yung the rest of the people na nakikinig, hindi na nakikinig. Pay attention ka lang dun sa sinasabi, then you will learn something from that person. Ngayon, kahit sinong naman taong napakagaling, galing-galing niyang magsalita, ang galing-galing niyang magpaliwanag, pero hindi ka nakikinig. Kausap mo yung katabi mo, may kausap kang iba, may iba kang ginagawa. Alam mo, you will never learn from that person, no matter how good they are. So the solution for you to learn something is to pay attention, or to pay attention to what you want to learn. To look for the answers of those things that you want to learn. That is what Professor said in the story. That's how we connect ourselves to the story. So pag nakikinig kayo movie, try nyo makinig dun sa mga sinasabi, mga lines. May mga linya kasi silang binibitawan. That's something that we can relate. Yun. something that we can relate dun sa mga story. So, one of those movies na napanood ko na nakarelate ako dun sa sinabi niya, na-caught yung attention ko talaga sinabi ni Professor X, yung there are things that mind needs find answers by itself. Kumbaga, mayroon kang gustong malaman, mayroon kang gustong matutunan, ikaw mismo yung maghanap ng kasagutan. That is what we mean by what Professor said, and that's how we apply it into our lives. Yeah, so yun yung text to self connection. Okay. Let's go on with the second type of telling story is an example within the story. We talk about the story itself and how we apply the context. Anyway, neto. Let's go on with the next type of connection. The next type of connection is text-to-text connection. When we said text-to-text connection, ito yung meaning niya. Text-to-text connection are connection where you relate one material to another that you have read or have already come across. Text might from the text similar from the author, same theme or topic, genre, and the like. So, yung text-to-text, ano lang to, may nabasa kang isang libro, you have read one book, then you compare it to the other that you have already read. Compare mo lang yung binabasa mo dun sa mga nababasa mo na. That's text-to-text connection. Guidelines in using text-to-self connection, we have, ito yung unang tanong, what does this remind me of another book that I have read? Nabasa ko na ba to sa ibang libro? Do you have the similar story? How is it text similar to other things that I have read? Parehas ba sila ng theme, ng topic? How is it different from the other book I've read? And have I read about something like this before? Kumbaga, try to connect with what you already know. This is what we call text-to-text connection. So, example ng text-to-text connection is Disney movies. Yung Disney movies, karamihan, or I found it the same, yung mga movies. Basta Disney yung nagawa, yung mga cartoon characters, they have the similar themes. Ano yung similar sa kanila? Nandun lagi yung hindi, syempre maraming kwento yon yung Disney movies. Iba-iba sila ng kwento, iba-iba ng character. Pero meron silang isang focus. Yung tema na believe in yourself. Lagi nilang, hindi man binabanggit, pero nandun yung idea na yung one of the character must believe in himself to be able to achieve something. Yun lagi ang pinopromote ng Disney movies. Example, one of the movies, yung Mulan. Yung Mulan, yung story niya is siyang woman, then who became a soldier. Siyempre, by that time, nung time ni Mulan, yung sa story lang, ang soldier lang, puro lalaki. So, bawal yung babae. So, nagpanggap siya na lalaki. Siya yung lumaban or sumama dun sa battle. Hanggang dun sa dulo ng story na discover na babae pala siya, na babae pala yung lumalaban. So, yung Mulan, meron dong part, makikita mo na who am I, kung sino ba talaga siya. Siyempre, self-identity, hindi niya alam kung sino ba talaga. Dumating siya punto na yon. But, pinopromote nung story yung believe in yourself. Maniwala ka lang kung sino ka, kung ano ka, na kaya mong gawin yung isang bagay. That's Mulan. Another story, yung Kung Fu Panda. Kung Fu Panda. Letter P, Panda. So, he seems as weak. Kumbaga sa story, makita mo yung si Panda, mahina siya compared dun sa mga kasamahan niya na magagaling makipaglaban. But at the end of or along the story, makikita niyo, dadating siya dun sa punto na he must believe in himself, he must believe in what he can do. Maniwala ka lang dun sa sarili. Pinopromote niya yon. Yun yung similarity niya from one text. Ito yung similarity ng one story to another story. Another story is Lion King. Parang dun sa pinakaluma. Yung lumang kwento nila. Lion King. If you already watched Lion King, story niya, he ran away from his home. Basta yung sa kingdom nung father niya na take over nung tito niya. Umalis siya doon. Then dumating siya dun sa punto na he must return to his land and take his responsibility as a king. But he refused. Ayaw niyang bumalik. Bakit? Because of his past life. Yung naalala niya yung nangyari dun sa nakaraan sa father niya. Then, the story promotes that we need to move and forget our past. Then kung hindi ka mag-move on dun sa nakaraan, dun sa nakalipas niya, then you will never be who you are if you don't return. Kung yun yung tema nung Lion King, bakit siya bumalik? Kasi as long as he lives in the wilderness, nandun lang siya. Pero ang true identity niya is to become the king. king nung society niya, hangga't hindi siya bumabalik dun sa society niya, hindi siya yon. Hindi niya matatagpuan yung sarili niya. Nandun na naman yung idea na you have to believe in yourself of who you are. Then nakukuha niya yung identity niya. Na nakikita niya yung identity niya pag bumalik na siya dun as a king. So yun yung yung tema niya. So from our topic, text-to-text connection, meron tayong different materials, yung Mulan, Kung Fu Panda, Lion King, but they have all the same theme. They fall on what we call believe in yourself. Minsan try ninyo, manood din kayo ng Disney movies. Then try to watch out kung meron ba sila nung believe in yourself. Yung one person naniniwala sa sarili na kayang gawin yung isang bagay. Then it will fall kasi yun yung pinopromote. Mostly, pag nanood ako ng mga movies, pag Disney movie talaga pinanood, laging nandun yung idea na one person must believe in himself to be able to do something. Yun yung pinopromote niya. So yun yung ito yung example ng text-to-text connection. From one story to another story, they have the same theme, the same topic. So yun text-to-text. Okay. So let's talk about the last type of connection, yung text-to-world. Siguro naman tong text-to-world ba na madali nang text-to-world. Text-to-world, madali na to intindihin. Yung text, i-connect mo dun sa world. Kung ano nangyayari sa mundo. So, text-to-world connection or larger connection that a reader brings to a reader. Okay. A reader brings to a reading situation including our perception of the world, which might vary since we have various sources of learning things beyond personal experiences. Examples, television, radio, magazine, article, movies, and etc. So yung text to world na to, yung context, yung story na binasa natin, we are just going to connect it to the world. Connect lang natin dun sa mundo natin. Hindi sa sarili. Hindi sa mundo mo. Connect mo sa pamilya mo, connect mo sa community mo, ano yung nangyayari sa community na may similarity dun sa story, ano yung nangyayari sa bansa, ano yung nangyayari sa mundo. So, yung world na to, hindi yung world ng mundo lang it's about other people. So, meron tayong different questions muna. Questions we ask using text to self. Examples nito is, what does this remind me of the real world? Yung mundo na ginagalawa natin. Then, how does this text similar to things that is happening in the real world? Or another one, how is it different from the things happening in the real world? And how does this part relate to the world around me? So when we said text to world, yun nga, we just connect the story to the world. Yung mundo hindi it's the globe, it's not the globe. Mundo yung ginagalawa natin. Pwede yan, sabi ko nga, pwede yan sa pamilya mo, mundo ng pamilya mo, mundo ng mga kaibigan mo. You can connect to the friends, you can connect to society. Yan yung mga ways on how we connect the world. We connect the story to the world. So you relate the story to the world, not to yourself, not to books, but to the world. So yan yung text to world. Let's move on. Let's recall the three types of connection. The three types of connection is text to self connection. Yung stories, kinoconnect mo sa sarili mo. That's self. Then text to text connection, one story connected to another story. Ano yung similarities nila or differences? That's text to text. And text to world, yung text kinoconnect mo dun sa totoong buhay na meron yung isang tao. So those are the three types of connections that we have. So let's talk about the poem. Let's apply yung text to connection dun sa poem. This time we're going to read the story Crossing the Bar. So ano bang ibig sabihin nitong Crossing the Bar, written by Alfred Lord Tennyson? So let's start with as what I've said, meron tayong two ways on how to read poems. Dalawang way yon, within the context and out of the context. Then yung out of the context, meron yan tatlong application. Sarili mo, libro, tsaka mundo. Yun lang ang tandaan ninyo. Yun lang yung tandaan ninyo dun sa making connections. Then last one is crossing the bar. Crossing the bar, let's talk all about within the context. Tungkol saan ba yung crossing the bar? What does the bar refers to? Okay, let's start with the first stanza. So, sunset and evening star. So, ano ba yung sunset? Siyempre, yung sunset, yun yung paglubog ng araw. Then, evening star. Ano yung evening star? Pag paglubog ng araw, meron kasing isang, hindi ko nakita yun. Meron kasing isang star na nagliliwanag lang. Yun yung tinutukoy niya. Merong sunset, then merong evening star. Then one clear call for me. Kumbaga, sabi niya, merong tumatawag sa kanya. And there may be no moaning of the bar. What do we mean by moaning? Yung moaning parang as sound of pain, pag masakit or crying, pero hindi lang siya umiiyak, pero nahihirapan siya sa sound of pain, nahihirapan siya. Yun yung what we said moaning. So sabi niya, sunset, yun yung situation or setting. Sunset siya, may tumawag sa kanya. Then sabi niya, there will be no moaning, wala nang pain, wala nang lungkot of the bar when I put out to sea. When we said out to sea, nung naglayag na siya. So makikita natin yung situation, yung setting, katulad ditong beach na nasa baba. Nandito pa lang siya sa land, then merong mga bubbles, yung mga waves or tides, then yung sea. So importante kasi yung second part is all about the waves. Kaya importante yung waves. So when he set out to the sea, pag naglayag na daw siya, there will be no moaning. Pag sumunod na siya dun sa tumatawag sa kanya, there will be no moaning, there will be no more pain. That's the first stanza. Second stanza, but such tide as moving seems asleep. Yung, when we said tide, yung waves, the tides as moving asleep, parang natutulog lang yung mga alon. Kumbaga, sinasabi niya, parang hindi naman malakas yung alon, hindi naman siya mahina. Hindi naman siya malakas, mahina lang siya. Katamtaman. Too full for sound and foam. Yung tunog, yung lagaslas ng alon, rinig na rinig mo, then yung foam yung parang mga bula. Kinukwento niya yung itsura nung tides or nung waves. When that which drew out from the boundless deep, yung boundless deep, itutukoy niya sa ocean, papunta dun sa land. Ulit, yung ocean, yung waves, papunta dun siya, the land. Then, sabi niya, it turns again home. Kumbaga, mula sa dagat, pumunta sa land, bumabalik ulit dun sa dagat. Yung flow lang ng waves, dinedescribe lang niya dun sa second part. But it has a meaning. Pag nag-out of the context na tayo, the tide has a meaning. Going forward to the land, then going back to the sea. It has a meaning or a deep meaning when it comes to out of the context. Pero dun muna tayo sa within. Ano ba yung kwento niya? Yon. Next paragraph, third paragraph, twilight and evening bell. What do you mean by twilight? So, pakita muna sa inyo yung twilight. Ito yung twilight. Start tayo dun sa sunset, pababa, papunta dun sa dilim. Twilight. Yung twilight is yung a time from day, a time of day between daylight and darkness. Yung lubog na yung araw. Sunset, nakalubog na yung araw pero maliwanag pa, di ba? Merong time na ganun. Yun yung twilight. Ulit, nakalubog na yung araw pero may liwanag pa ng araw. That's the twilight. Going to dusk. Then, all the way dito sa baba, yung dark na to, dark side, ano yan? Yun yan yung gabi. Then, from dawn, yung pagbukang liwayway, dawn, yung pagsikat ng araw, maliwanag na sa umaga pero wala pang araw. That's also twilight. Until the sunrise, hanggang sa lumabas na yung araw. So, that's what we mean by twilight. So, twilight and the evening bell. Evening bell, parang, ang twilight dito na tinutukoy yung sa gabi. Sa gabi, may twilight, palubog ng araw. Then, evening bell, it reminds me of something na oras na. Bell. Yun. And after that, the dark. After yung twilight, magdidilim na, dark na siya. And maybe there be no sadness of farewell. So, wala nang lungkot ng pagpapaalala when I embark, kapag naglayag na siya, or when he leave. Yung embark, when we said leave, umalis na siya. There will be no sadness of farewell. So, dinescribe niya rito yung situation na pagdating ng gabi, naglayag na siya, wala nang sadness. Baga, wala nang mourning, wala nang pain, wala nang sadness. That's the third part. The last part is for though from out of bourne of time and place, the flood may bear me far. I hope to see my pilot face to face when I cross the bar. Dito naman sinabi niya um, ano yung napipredict niya na mangyayari in the future after he crossed the bar. After he crossed the bar, he hoped to see his pilot face to face and when I have crossed the bar. So that's what we mean by um, that bar. Makikita niya yung pilot niya. So, when I cross the bar, okay. So, that's the story of the crossing the bar. Yun yung yung kwento niya, wala lang, nandun lang siya sa sea papagabi, magladayag na, aalis na siya. And then, pag alis niya, there will be no moaning, then there will be no sadness. Then, at the end of the sea, makikita na niya yung pilot niya. Or he's talking about the pilot. Kinukwento lang niya yung, simple lang, yung paglisan niya. Yun lang yung buong story nung crossing the bar. So, let's talk about crossing the bar, or let's talk about yung kwento ni Alfred Tennyson. Why did he write the crossing the bar? Ano ba yung kwento ni Tennyson? Alam na natin yung kwento ni nung story. But what is the meaning of the crossing the bar through Alfred Tennyson? So Alfred Tennyson wrote the Cross the Bar in 1889. 100 years na yun nakalaya. 3 years before he died. So the poem described his excitement or excited siya and accepting attitude towards death. So yun yung meaning ng crossing the bar. Ang pinupunto niya yung pagkamatay niya. Pag namatay na siya, sabi nga niya, pag nag-cross na siya ng bar, mamimit niya yung pilot niya. Pilot refers to God. Then there will be no more mourning, no more pain. Yun yung dinedescribe niya dun sa story. Although he followed his work with subsequent poems, he requested that the Crossing the Bar appear as the final poem in all collection of his works. So yung Crossing the Bar, yun yung gusto niyang maalala sa kanya. Then the poem itself is a metaphor for death. Tinutukoy nito yung pagtawid dun sa bar. So ano nga ba yung tinatawag na bar? Crossing the bar could interpret means crossing the sandbar. Yung sandbar, it is yung place kung saan ka tumayo between dun sa mga waves then the ocean. Yung sandbar. Yung path along the the ocean. Yung path na yun. Yun yung sandbar. So out into the sea, transitioning from life into death. So tinutukoy niya dito yung pagkamatay niya. This is now out of the context. Hindi naman niya binanggit na mamamatay siya dun sa story. Kumbaga, nag-out of the context tayo, nag-out of the context na ano yung meaning ngayon nung poem niya. That's what we mean by out of the context. In the context, ano yung kwento niya, out of the context, yun yung application niya. Ina-apply niya to about his death. The pilot is a symbol for God. Tennyson wrote that pilot has been on the board all the while in the dark, I have not seen him. That He's divine and unseen who is always guiding us. Basta yung pilot, he refers it to God. So, yun. So, yun yung meaning or story nung crossing the bar. So before we end, the topic about the crossing the bar, yung crossing the bar was turned into a song. So, listen to the song, then anticipate yung meaning ng song as you listen dun sa crossing the bar. Poem talaga to. Nilapatan lang ng kanta ng mga sumunod na generation. So, while listening to the song, I hope you would appreciate more yung meaning as a person approach it towards his death. Kumbaga, tayo, text to self, yung content is, what if we are the one who is approaching death? Ano yung feeling or what emotions could we feel? So let us listen to the song Crossing the Bar.
Sunset and evening star and one clear call for me. May there be no moaning of the bar when I put out sound and foam. When that which drew from out the boundless deep turns again home, turns again home, turns again home. When that which drew from out the boundless deep turns again home. Twilight and evening bell, and after that the dark. May there be no sadness of farewell when I embark. When I embark. When I embark. May there be no sadness of farewell when I embark. For though from out our bourne of time and place the flood may bear me far, I hope to see my pilot face to face when I have crossed the bar. When I have crossed the bar, when I have crossed the bar, I hope to see my pilot face to face when I have crossed the bar. When I have crossed the bar, when I have crossed the bar, I hope to see my pilot face to face when I have crossed the bar.
Okay, I hope you appreciate the story of crossing the bar. So as it gives a message that time will come where there will be no moaning and no sadness. And a time will come we're going to meet our own pilot. So that's the meaning of the poem Crossing the Bar. So for your learning task, you're going to answer the following questions. What do sunset and evening stars symbolize? What does turn again home in stanza number 2 mean? What is entity referred to by the word pilot in stanza number 4? What does crossing the bar mean? 5. How can you relate the meaning of the poem to your personal experiences? And number 6, can you associate this with other people's experiences and explain? So that will be your learning task for day 1. Okay, I would like to say thank you for listening. See you again on our next meeting.